a young girl from the countryside, youthful, free, carefree. She captured the heart of the most eligible bachelor in Europe. He married her, made her the Empress, an international star, a fashion icon. Millions adored her, yet she was utterly unhappy. The marriage disappointed her, the court rejected her, and the people's love became a burden. Who was Elizabeth Sisi truly before she turned into a legend? December 24th, 1837, a Christmas Eve in Munich. At 10:43 p.m., a girl came into the world who would later rise to become one of Europe's most influential and renowned beauties. Elisabeth Amalie Eugenie von Wittelsbach. Her family lovingly called her by the affectionate names Liesel or Sisi. In Munich, the family lived fittingly. The Herzog-Max-Palais, grand rooms, frescoes, a private riding arena. Here, little Elizabeth received private lessons. Etiquette, languages, music, all the essentials fitting for a duchess. But behind the radiant facade lies an intricately complex family history. Sisi's mother, Ludovika, did not want this marriage. Her heart belonged to the Portuguese prince Dom Miguel. But fate had other plans. She had to marry Duke Max, a union of convenience, as was customary among the nobility. They manage to get along, but Ludovika never finds true happiness. Often she is melancholic, yearning deeply for a different life. Duke Max, a man of the world, an adventurer, often away for months at a time, while Ludovika is left alone with the new children.
Die Welt ruft, ich muss fort.
Just a week after Sisi's birth, he leaves once more for one of his renowned journeys. But there is one place that changes everything, Possenhofen. In 1834, Duke Max buys the fairy tale castle by Lake Starnberg. 4 corner towers, a small chapel for Weif and Wertig Guilders. Here, Ludovika finds solace. We live here very quietly, and I like it very much, she writes. Possenhofen becomes her refuge. Far from the Munich court, far from a marriage she never wanted. For Sisi, it's a paradise. Animals everywhere, deer, sheep, chickens. It can happen that a sheep strolls into the castle and no one is surprised. Often the linens stay on the furniture, the chandeliers wrapped in cloth. Everything is relaxed, easygoing, the opposite of Vienna's stiff etiquette. In Possenhofen, Sisi didn't learn what mattered at court. Education was secondary. Horseback rides and rowing trips were far more important than formal lessons. At that time, no one could have guessed she would one day become empress. Only Ludovika was concerned about her children's future and occasionally intervened. Perhaps she was also thinking about her own fate, a marriage she never wanted. She wishes her daughters a different life. Sisi loves her father, even though he's rarely around. When he visits Possenhofen, the kids flock to him. Sisi shares a special bond with him. He gives her a horse and personally teaches her to ride. She inherits his deep passion for the sport and remains devoted to him for her entire life. He shows her the elegant floating gait and even brings in a teacher for her. Duke Max is also a musician, an enthusiastic zither player who goes to fairs in disguise, sings and plays. Sisi is probably the only one of his children that he takes along on such outings. She dances to his music, her braids flying. In her apron, she catches coins that the farm boys toss her way. Some she saves and proudly displays later at the Imperial court. "That's the only honest money I've ever earned," she says with a laugh. These experiences shape her. From her father, she learns to appreciate simplicity, stay close to the people, and bypass conventions when they become restrictive. While Sisi grows up freely in Possenhofen, the world in Vienna is changing. After the revolutions of 1848, a young man sits on the throne. Franz Joseph, just 18, and there because his mother wanted it that way. Archduchess Sophie compels her husband to renounce all his claims in favor of their son. With the help of the army, Franz Joseph brutally suppresses the revolution. He rules strictly, authoritatively, and becomes unpopular. Sophie quickly understands the young emperor needs a fresh image, a marriage, a family, an heir, and a lovely woman the people can truly adore.
Es ist an der Zeit, dass du heiratest und eine passende Braut findest.
Ja, Mutter, ich weiß.
She decides on Helene, the eldest daughter of Ludovika, Sisi's mother. It's the perfect match, socially fitting, entirely proper, and politically without any concerns.
Helene, deine Zukunft könnte die größte Ehre für unsere Familie sein.
Ich weiß, Mutter.
Ludovika hesitates. She knows the fate of arranged marriages all too well, but the pressure is immense. And Franz Joseph, Europe's most sought-after bachelor. Duke Max rejects the trip outright. He's not about to spend his time being bored in Bad Ischl. Ludovika travels alone with Helene and also takes the 15-year-old Sisi along, unengaged, unplanned. In the family, she's widely regarded as the ugly duckling. On August 16th, 1853, they finally make it to Bad Ischl. What starts as a harmless family visit becomes the turning point in Sisi's life. Franz Joseph sees her and has no eyes for Helene anymore. He falls head over heels for the wild child from Lake Starnberg. Supposedly, Archduchess Sophie later says to her husband, "What on earth does Franz want with that little brat?" Franz Joseph doesn't get engaged to the bride intended for him, but to her little very young sister instead. A love story, as it almost never happens in royal households. For Sisi, it's overwhelming. She finds him nice, but an emperor? Back then, it was almost impossible for unmarried couples to spend time alone. One of the few opportunities, a shared carriage ride. And so, Franz Joseph decides to ride with Sisi through the valleys of the Salzkammergott. To ensure their privacy, on the coach box wasn't a regular driver, but his closest friend, Count Gruner. Perhaps it's this very moment, free from protocol, just the two of them, when Sisi truly feels for the first time what love is. This ride becomes a special moment, so much so that decades later, Franz Joseph would still rave about it in a letter. About the beauty of the landscape and how truly happy he had felt on that particular day. A painting captures this scene. Two young people enveloped in the romance of a summer day, unaware of just how profoundly this decision would transform their lives. After the engagement in Bad Ischl, a completely new life begins for Sisi. Just a few weeks earlier, a carefree girl from Lake Starnberg, now the future empress of the largest empire in the world. Prepared she is not, but the Viennese court sends teachers to Bavaria for history, protocol, and languages. Tailors and jewelers also travel to outfit her. The young princess is meant to shine as empress. In spring, she sets off for Vienna. In Munich, she is celebrated with a grand farewell. She travels by ship along the Danube. At every stop, young men, music bands, and gifts are ready to greet her arrival. People are crowded together to catch a glimpse of her. The entrance into Vienna, a highlight. For the first time, the new empress is presented to the people. Sisi sits in a golden carriage, originally built for Napoleon Bonaparte. Highly glazed all around so that everyone can see her clearly. Next to her is her mother, Ludovika. She is only 16 years old. Crowds are lining the streets, cheering her on loudly. Sisi feels overwhelmed and quite nervous. She wears a diadem, a gift from Franz Joseph. As Sisi steps out, the crown gets unexpectedly caught on the doorframe. She stumbles, breaks down in tears instantly. It's her first public appearance as the future Empress of Austria. Some would later argue that it was seen as a bad omen. For neither in her marriage nor in her role as Empress would she ever truly find lasting happiness again. After the wedding, a grand reception is held at the Hofburg. Sisi stands beside Franz Joseph as sovereign under the canopy. The entire court is introduced to her. Sisi feels intimidated. The endless rows of nobles, the strict etiquette, the scrutinizing gazes. In the midst of the crowd, she spots two cousins from Bavaria, finally familiar faces. An instinct. She wants to rush towards them to hug them, but her mother-in-law Sophie immediately raises her hand. An empress does not embrace. She extends her hand to be kissed. For Sisi, it's a shocking moment. Her heart pounds wildly. Her eyes brim with tears. She rushes to the adjoining room and collapses in despair. The honeymoon wasn't about togetherness, but rather everyday life with the mother-in-law, court rituals, and endless rules. At Laxenburg Castle near Vienna, Sisi realizes after just a few days that marriage to the emperor isn't a fairy tale, it's a duty. Yes, Franz Joseph loves her and she loves him, but they couldn't possibly be more different from each other. Sisi was romantic, dreamy, full of poetry and longing. Franz Joseph was sober and practical. Driven by a sense of duty and work, he couldn't make sense of her cloud climbing, as he called it. Every morning he went to Vienna to study documents. He returned late in the evening, leaving Sisi behind, alone, isolated and surrounded by a rigid court society. He scoffed at her cloud climbing, worked in Vienna, came back late. Sisi stayed, watched by court and mother. Just a country girl. You have no idea how to act as an empress. That's the message she's constantly reminded of, every single day. Just 14 days after the wedding, she writes a poem. In it, she expresses, "I have awakened in a dark dungeon." That is her new life. She bitterly curses herself for having foolishly surrendered her freedom out of vanity. But the emperor needs her, not just privately, but politically. Franz Joseph's reign begins in a time full of crises. In 1848, he crushed the revolution with armed force. Hungary and Italy were fiercely determined to break away from his imperial rule. Many peoples of the empire hate the Habsburgs. The solution? A young empress. Beautiful, radiant, popular. Even in the early years of marriage, the couple travels through the provinces, to Bohemia, to Hungary, even to hostile Venice. Everywhere the same scene unfolds. Franz Joseph remains cool and detached, but Sisi? She sparks immense enthusiasm wherever she goes. The people cheer for her, even in places where the emperor is despised. Her youth, her naturalness, her charisma are more powerful than any army. In Vienna, it's soon said that the empress pacifies provinces with her smile, where the emperor only sends cannons. In the capital, she also celebrates resounding successes. In 1854, during the Grand Corpus Christi procession, tens of thousands streamed into Vienna. Not to see the emperor, but the young empress. A sea of eyes turned to her, a torment and at the same time a triumph for Sisi, as she stood in the spotlight, overwhelmed yet radiant under the intense and unrelenting gaze of the crowd. Because deep inside, she remains shy. She hates the stares, the gawking, the endless gazing. But she realizes only when she shines does she have a part. Only when she captivates is she truly respected. So she turns necessity into a virtue and transforms her weakness into a weapon. She transforms beauty into her strength, her tall, slender figure, and above all, her hair. A dense, silky, shimmering cascade that reaches down to her knees, she turns it into a cult. She employs a dedicated personal hairdresser who spends 4 hours each day solely focused on styling her hair. But it doesn't stop at the hair. Her toilette becomes a ritual, lacing, styling, sewing, adjusting. A work that takes hours, so much so that Sisi often has to get up as early as 4 in the morning for appointments. When she finally appears, she seems as if she stepped out of another world, a truly enchanting fairy tale presence. Soon, the widespread renown of her beauty extended far beyond the kingdom's boundaries. Not just ordinary people, even crowned heads traveled to Vienna. Even the Shah of Persia wanted to see the Empress with his own eyes. The carefree girl from Possenhofen has vanished. In her place stands a young empress, celebrated like a star, yet confined in a gilded cage of unyielding duty and societal demands. Her smile is politics, her beauty a matter of state, her body a symbol, and her life no longer truly belongs to her in any meaningful way. But that is only the beginning. Sisi will fight for her children, for her freedom, and for the love she holds dear. In the end, she will rise as a true and enduring legend, yet the immense price she paid was beyond all measure. How her story unfolds, you'll discover in the next part.